Welcome to the Copilot Connection.
We're here to share with you all the news, insights, and capabilities of the Microsoft Copilot ecosystem from across the entire Microsoft stack. I'm Zoe Wilson, and I'm an executive at Avanade in our modern work business, an MVP for M365, a regional director, and a Viva Explorer.
And I'm Kevin McDonnell, MVP, Viva Explorer, and Copilot Strategy and Modern Workplace AI Lead at Avanade. And we'll be releasing these episodes as podcasts and on YouTube with insights from experts from across the community, from Microsoft, on all the different areas of Copilot, the impact they can make to you and your organization, what you need to do to prepare for them or start implementing them now, and even, very pertinent today, on how you can extend them.
So this week, we thought we'd talk about Wave 2 announcements. But before we get into that, it's actually quite a special day today, isn't it, Kevin? Because we're actually celebrating 1 year since our very first Copilot Connection episode.
Which is really quite scary. And I also feel a little bit like those people on TV that record a few days before Christmas so they don't have to, because it's not really today, but we are publishing it today. So we have to kind of pretend. And I'm hoping it's going to be sunnier on Monday than it is today. But yeah, it's really strange thinking that this has been going for a year already, and that we've had Copilot really there and part of our lives for quite that long as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking the other day, I think it's about, I don't know, 15, 16 months since I got my Copilot license, which is just incredible. And when you think, so initially, when you think from a product perspective, just how much the product has evolved. So M365 Copilot specifically. But then when you look across that broader ecosystem.
You say evolved. I mean, it's gone full circle when it comes to the name in that time, hasn't it? Which has been great.
Yeah, I like that, sneaking Wave 2 announcements in early. So there's certainly been a lot of renaming fun over the last year. But when we think about why we started this podcast, really, it was just because there was so much hype, so much momentum, so much confusion with people not understanding the different co-pilots and how they could be used and the value and all of those things. So I can't believe it's been a year since our first episode. I still feel like there's a really strong need to help cut through a lot of that hype and marketing confusion, especially when you think about all of the renames and things like that. But I'm really excited as well to see.
And the functional co-pilots, I think helping people to understand what they really are and cutting through some of the marketing from that and really get the true value to people and what they can bring and getting people to think ahead as well of what these things are becoming as well as what they are now, I think has been really important in that year.
Yeah, and I know you'll have heard me say this at work, Kevin, but one of the things that I feel is really important for everybody who works in this space is that we all need to get out of our bubble. So the one of the things that the co-pilots are driving is this blurring of the lines between the different technology and solution areas. So for those people who predominantly work in the BizApp space, they need to start understanding Copilot as the experience layer, how this surfaces in things like Teams, what that user experience is like, which maybe they've not had to think about in the same way before, because people typically went to their products to to work inside Dynamics and that kind of thing. But for those of us who come from a modern work background, equally, we need to we need to have a better understanding and appreciation of the systems that sit outside of our M365 area, and how Copilot will interact with the data and bring the data back. And that's like the biggest call to action I've been saying to people. We need to get outside of our primary technology area and start to look across the entire stack.
Yeah, and I think it's also been a year of experimentation. It's working out what works for different people, not just what works, but to be able to get into those different stacks and say, yes, this is something that's worthwhile, or no, this is something that we need to invest differently to get the benefit from that across those different areas, exactly as you're kind of saying with those as well. And I think it's also been it's been great to kind of connect as well as kind of horizontally between different groups going on there. Vertically as well, there's been more conversations around the value of different areas. It's probably been the technology I've seen that's had most resonance with kind of more senior leadership. It feels like the kind of thing talked about on the golf course. You know, we need this. We need to make this a value for us as well, which has helped bring in other conversations such as governance. Yeah, who would have thought that C-suite would be
in, in
on there?
Yeah, information oversharing. That golf course point is really funny actually, because I do think that's where a lot of the early Copilot deals were made. To be honest, CEOs talking to each other on the golf course.
I was speaking to a CEO. He said he first heard about it at the golf course. I was like, oh my gosh, I've just run into a stereotype.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a really good point. And I've talked about technology as a business enabler for years. But in many organizations, IT, even recently, has been seen just as a cost center or an overhead, rather than something that enables an organization to drive its business. And one of the biggest changes I've seen in the last year is that business leadership and business sponsorship of the Copilot project, because the value for this, it's not just an IT product that IT should be running and showing people how to use and making available. It needs real business leadership to actually drive the behaviors and the changes that we need to see in organizations.
Yeah. And just in case those listening are in one of those areas where, no, we are still seen as just IT, it is still going on, sadly. I was chatting to people at Club Days Bletchley Park who were exactly in that situation, and kind of encouraging them to have this conversation about the co-pilots to kind of build that up and see the business value, and encouraging people to work out how they speak in different ways about it to get that enablement. Don't go in there talking about all the techie sides to it. Talk about the value it brings to people that will help from there as well.
Yeah. So what are you
I think
looking forward to
the
most
other thing
this
I
in?
found interesting
Sorry, we've got a bit of a delay going on there, I think.
after you,
Yeah, just a quick one, Kevin. So when you look back at where this journey's gone in the last 12 months, what are you most excited for in the next 12 months?
um, I'm trying not to jump too far because we're going to talk about Wave 2 in a minute. But one of the things I love from that was the fact that they addressed the feedback. So they looked at areas that were not seen as great, and I'll talk about those in a minute, and brought those forward and improved on those. So what am I looking forward to is them improving on that. And I think in some ways, it's been a little disappointing year because kind of all that promise that we had with Copilot, it's kind of taken 9 months to a year to get to the reality across the board of that. And if we look at a lot of what we're talking about with Copilot now, it's a huge chunk of that is the same as it was a year ago. So what I'm looking forward to is those new ideas. I think with agents that, again, we'll talk about in a minute, that extensibility, but also going beyond chatbots. I was just speaking with Caroline Callin and some interviews that we're going to broadcast shortly on that. And I think it's that areas of where you're seeing that integration happen, not just the chatbot, but things like scheduling meetings is almost powered by Copilot instead of just being chatting to Copilot and building prompts. So I'm really excited to see that integration into the products, and also that integration across products, that ability to kind of use Copilot to connect different things together. It is going to be huge on there, and I think it's that ongoing evolution, and the fact that well we've got plenty to talk about in these podcasts over the next 6 to 12 months as well, that I'm really looking forward to. How about you?
So for me, I feel like the last year has been the year of personal productivity, and this year is the year where we're really going to start to see the reinvention of work start happening. So when we think about kind of And I think you're right about that fact that it's taken 9, 12 months for us to actually get to that common understanding. But it's because we're so early in this journey. But now I
Mm.
feel like, for those early organizations, we've got to a really good point. And I feel like this next year is going to be the year of extensibility and transforming work and business processes and things like that.
So, what about wave two? Maybe I'm seeing the chat on the side, so you need to drop off camera a sec. So I'll talk for a little minute on there about wave two. Because basically 2 weeks from when this episode was is being released, we had Copilot Wave 2 announced, and what I loved was it was announced by Satya Nadella and Jared Spatera. It showed the importance that Microsoft sees of this next wave of their. I was thinking of Mustafa Suleyman, who's moved to Microsoft, kind of one of the co-founders of DeepMind, on there, and a great voice when it comes to AI. And his book, which I know Zoe, you've started reading, and I've started listening to on Audible, called The Coming Wave. And it was like, oh, I see where they're kind of maybe tying these two together. It's that kind of, it's going to be this flow of change of there. So I think there's kind of three big areas of announcements that I saw from the Wave 2 to talk about. One was Copilot Pages, which was it's similar to what you were just saying there, Zoe, around getting that more collaborative way of working. So for those who haven't seen it, it's that ability to run a prompt, but then take the output to that prompt and put it into a common collaborative area. For those of you who know, yes, it is indeed Loop as that common area. And there you can work on it with other people, and you can still ask for prompts, maybe expand on this area, bring that different collection into that as well. And then you can, because it's in Loop, you can take that into other systems. So it's kind of starting in that Copilot BizTalk area, moving to a collaborative area. And it was a good symbol of that move towards the collaborative Copilot. The other big one was Copilot agents that I'm sure we'll touch on. And I've been speaking with Lauren Strand and Tom Morgan, and we'll play some of those interviews in a minute. And that's the key area. It's the extension of this extensibility talk that's been going through. It's almost the reality of a lot of that. There's been lots of promise, lots of talk. We've had others on the show talking about that. But to me, it's that reflection of where this is going. It wants to be that autonomous agent sitting next to you to help you, whether you're there directly or whether you're working, whether it's kind of working when you're not there, doing that intelligence, checking. You could have it checking your emails for kind of common threads and prompts and having that surface to you. You can have it running through and looking at documents being created that may be relevant to you and nudging towards those summaries of there. It's things happening to help you, not to replace you. And I'm sure we'll come back to that in a minute. And then the final thing with Wave 2, as well as the agents and Copilot pages, was we saw a lot of enhancements. I think Jared Spatero talked about 700 enhancements that have come to Copilot. We've seen that extension of using GPT 4.0, so the performance and quality of Copilot has increased. I was chatting with Simon Doy at Bletchley Park, and he said he's seen the formatting appear a bit differently and look more impressive and effective since those Wave 2 announcements. We've seen things run a bit quicker, but also we've seen that feedback of the areas. I mentioned this just now, but the Excel and PowerPoint, which have always been the kind of weaker areas of Copilot, now they've seen big increases. So within Copilot, we've got that narrative builder that can help you. Within PowerPoint, we've got that narrative builder that can help you build up your presentation in one go using Copilot and AI to kind of construct that allow you to tell your story in one go, and then bring your branded items into that as well as the kind of DALL-E powered imaging. And then in Excel, we've got the full kind of general availability and bringing in things like VLOOKUPs, pivot tables, a lot more power in working with those functions, plus the advanced analytics where you can ask it to analyze your data that's there. And basically it's using Python, and a bit like VBA, you used to record macros. Now you can ask it to build that. It will create a Python script which will analyze your data, and then you can work in that. So I see these three key areas of Copilot pages, Copilot agents, and those enhancements and updates that we've seen come through as the big announcements there. Right, Zoe, I hope I've covered enough time. What were your thoughts on Wave 2? Did you enjoy the live announcements?
Well, unfortunately, Kevin, I didn't quite catch the live announcements because I was taking some well-deserved holiday, and I think at the time it went live, I was either at the side of a pool or eating in Cyprus. Um, I did follow on with a lot of the news though, because when the Wave 2 event was taking place, and immediately afterwards, all social media, all the internet was just a flurry of announcements and blogs and activity, and people sharing their views. I think one of the things that I've been really pleased to see is the evolution of the product.
Mm.
So not just announcing, I mean, there are shiny new things they've announced as you've just talked through, but it's not just about announcing like the shiny new things that this is going to be able to do, but the fact that they've actually recognized and made some significant improvements. I've talked to a lot of people over the last few months who said, they don't use Copilot in Excel. It's got no value, or they don't find it helpful in
See?
PowerPoint. Yeah. And I'm really hopeful that with some of these improvements and the intent from Microsoft, that these things will actually become as useful as Copilot in some of the other parts of the stack.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's that general improvement. I certainly expected when we heard about this that it was going to be a very marketing heavy event, talking about lots of things that had already been announced from there and kind of packaging them up in a nice, shiny way as if they were something new. And I think we had a chunk of that. I'm not going to duck away from that. I think Copilot agents, a large chunk of that was a rename, plus some interesting things as well. But I think they also had those meaty new announcements in there that were a nice surprise as well. So I think it was a really good balance of what they put through from there that kind of kept everyone happy. And I know on the techie side, we kind of get fed up with these big marketing announcements when you've told us this already, but it's important. It gets the attention. It makes people look again, and I feel that, to me, one of the biggest things about Wave 2 was now's the time to go back and look again at things that maybe you haven't quite built the habit around. It's not necessarily even with Excel and PowerPoint that people have tried and gone, yeah, I don't like it. It's even where things you've quite liked but haven't necessarily built into your natural flow of doing things. Now's the opportunity to go and kind of push yourself to try that again and work that into there. I love the Copilot in Word because it's so natural and integrated now, and that is a natural part of my habits within there. I think the one I don't use much that I feel I should because I quite like is Copilot and OneNote. I just haven't built the habit around there, and that's another one that I'd love to kind of entice myself back into using that, and it's a good opportunity to think about that again.
Yeah, I think my challenge with Copilot in OneNote was that because I use OneNote really extensively, I think like you, I haven't built the habit, and I think it's because when I did try a lot of the things that it was meant to be able to do, it just wouldn't do. I think it's the app where I've had the most errors, to be honest, out of all of them. But I definitely will be spending more time in that, and actually Copilot Pages, I think, is going to be a really interesting one as well for that. Copilot enhanced collaboration.
Yeah, and I wonder, we're both talking about OneNote, whether Copilot Pages will encourage me into building the habit of using Loop a bit more as well. I've kind of, to me, OneNote is the place I always go to because it's quick and easy. But if I've got that deeper Copilot integration, it might encourage me with Loop a bit more. So we'll certainly think about that again. I think another example, I was looking back at Copilot Studio. I had to do a demo, and should I confess this publicly? I'm going to go all in and do it. I kind of built a deck of all the things that I thought Copilot Studio should do, and I found it didn't actually do within there. And I actually went back recently and kind of rebuilding that deck, and all the things that weren't there are now working. on there. So the ability to connect to other things. And this is where I see is now's the opportunity to go back and look again at things. But should we take a pause there? I think we don't exactly know how this is going to go through because I'm going to go and record and cut some of these. So you might hear my dulcet tones again as I kind of introduce different people. But we're going to play back some interviews while Zoe was off sunning and eating too much on holiday. I've managed to record some interviews with some fantastic people in the community. So Zoe, should we play back a few of those now?
Yep, I think that's an absolutely fantastic idea. Before we do that, though, I just wanted to say to all of those people who've followed, listened, been a part of this podcast from the beginning, thank you. It's been an absolutely fantastic year for both Kevin and I. I've personally really enjoyed the opportunity to speak to so many of you at events, to get all of the interviews that we've had in previous episodes. We've had fantastic discussions with people about Copilot and this journey that we're all on together. So thank you, and tell your friends as well. We want more.
Yeah, tell more people, tell your friends, tell your colleagues, subscribe to us, encourage other people's, and even vote for us in awards. If there happen to be some awards in the UK around the kind of tech community, perhaps there are some voting going on for that. So do consider putting some votes in there as well.
All right, time to check out the interviews.
Let's roll VT. So, hello, I'm here with Lorien Strand. Lorien, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, Lorien Strand, MVP for...
It needs no more introduction.
A number of years. Yeah, I kind of do a lot of different things, as you can tell with the Copilot. I also love my swag. But I guess up until recently, been working at Rapid Circle, but... I don't really know what to. Usually other people introduce me, and then my head gets big and explodes. So I don't know. People look.
Well, I genuinely don't think you need any introduction. I think you're very well known and done some incredible stuff in there. Not just playing around with standing desks, as we were just talking about, but today we're talking. Obviously, yesterday was the announcement around Copilot Wave 2, and here at Copilot Connection, we're going to try and get a few people together to see what their thoughts were. So I'm going to open this up and say, Lorien, what did you think about Copilot Wave 2?
Look, I think it's like with all Microsoft announcements, you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. So there's a lot of great things about it, but there's also things that we've been promised previously that are now kind of showing up as Wave 2. Like, for example, I've got to get the right terminology, the Copilot agent in SharePoint, was scheduled for rollout in September anyway. So kind of like shouldn't almost be in there. But I think things like Copilot Pages was really good to have that kind of, canvas that you can share with people. And I think for me, as a person who loves PowerPoint and who thinks in PowerPoint, the narrative functionality was incredibly exciting for me. So I think what we're probably seeing is Copilot moving more from the informative and slightly assistive to actually being an actual co-pilot. I think that though the only and I wouldn't say it's a negative, the thing is that Copilot is advancing far beyond the pace of the user take up, because there'll always be numbers about how many users are using it, but it'll always be ambiguous numbers. Is it exactly Copilot paid licenses or those kind of things? But it's kind of like when we had Office 2007 come out, we switched to the ribbon and then we moved forward. And then people still weren't up to speed with the ribbon and the features in Office 2007. And hey, we're already at Office 2013 and starting to move to the cloud and things like that. So I think there's that side of things that we do still have to make sure that we are bringing people along for the journey and keeping them up to speed with it. And the other aspect is also the hallucinations, and validity of the data that it creates. Because one of the things that when I did Copilot workshops for clients, I would show them a PowerPoint slide deck that was 100% hallucination. And it was a prompt that I typed into Copilot, BizChat, as we're actually now using that term. Not
Again.
BizTalk, BizChat.
Sorry, that's one for you, Al Erdley. I know you messaged me about BizTalk. Sorry.
I put a prompt in and asked it about the Copilot trial system that I built a while ago, actually over a year ago. And it gave me a really good answer because it pulled it from SharePoint, pulled it from the page that I created to document it. Great. So then I went into PowerPoint and gave it pretty much the same prompt, but added some extra bits saying create a visual of the workflow, use the list to show how many people had actually subscribed, fill out exit surveys, those things. And it created a complete hallucination about a license management system called Copilot, and it was full of aviation themes. So I use that in my workshops to go, hey, using Copilot to create content is great, but you got to check to make sure it's valid.
That sounds very dangerous in a workshop because everyone goes, that's a really good idea. Could you make that for us? Whoa. No, that's not the point here. But one of the announcements I loved, and I love that they said this very clearly, that they're now using GPT 4.0. And before they've always kind of skirted around a little bit on that, but they were very clear on that as a message, clear on that powering higher performance, better quality within there. What I haven't seen them mention is that I know there's the Azure AI content safety tools, and one of the things built into that is trying to help identify hallucinations. I don't think there was much around kind of improved hallucination detection, or did I miss that anywhere?
I don't recall anything on that, and I think, in all honesty, it's going to be a struggle to be able to fix that in general, because I've got a slide that I also show in the workshops, and I actually show it next to Matt Wade's fantastic graphic of the junk in, junk out thing, with credit to him. When I presented,
we'll add that to the show notes if you haven't seen it.
I also have an image that I put next to it, which is basically the same document with a few different, it's 5 instances of the same document in 3 different locations, modified 4 out of 5 of them by the same person. The dates are relatively similar. The names are like /_ draft _ final, or the same name, but in a different folder in the same site. And so I look at this and go, how is Copilot supposed to know which one's the real one? Because I, as a human being with context, would struggle to know which is the real one. How will an AI be able to do it? So that's the challenge with hallucinations, is if it's dealing with junk data, it's going to create a hallucination, but it's not the model's fault, because a human, as it would, struggle to be able to tell. So how's the AI going to know?
So going back to my other point then, agents, and very excited about these. I'm going to be cautious here because I know there's some things that are coming out. There's some things that are out now, which seem to be things that were out the day before and have just had a rename. There's some new stuff coming. But I think along this, there is this agentic view that would allow things to happen when you're not there, that things will process and trigger and do cool AI stuff when you're not there. And this does seem to kind of go against what Copilot's been, which is there at your side, helping you, driven by you. So are we seeing a shift in this side?
I don't think so. I think it was always supposed to be that. It's just we weren't there, because if you look back at some of the earlier blogs about Copilot and Windows, there was talk about Copilot assisting with certain things. Now, again, probably still helping the user, but I think it was supposed to go beyond just the, just the realm of its immediate application and go beyond that. In terms, I think I remember seeing something, and maybe I'm hallucinating here, about if you answer a call on Teams, then it pauses Spotify for you, something like that. Again, maybe completely wrong, but it was.
Yeah, that was well. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is the Windows side of things, they were positioning Copilot to be, it will help do things for you and be more proactive for you. Kind of like how Cortana was positioned quite some time ago. And so that's the thing, is I don't think this is a shift. I think it's just maybe, hopefully, a delivery, delivering on the promise. Because do you remember the Microsoft Band?
Yes, the kind of
Yeah.
watch style thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I happened to be in Seattle the day that those launched, or like kind of
Oh,
surprise
nice.
launched. And I remember reading an article that one of the promises was of the band back then was connecting Cortana to Office 365. And what it would be able to do is see that every 10 a.m., every Monday morning at 10 a.m., my heart rate elevates. Oh, it's because you've got the sales meeting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to book in at 9:45. You do a walk around the block. That was, and I
Mm.
can't find the blog article, but I remember because that
Yeah.
promise, this
Yeah.
is going
Rings
back
a
to like
bell.
2018. That was like, wow, that's what a Copilot would be doing. So I think that this kind of wave two, and to be honest, we probably won't see it till more like wave three,
Mm.
or whatever we call it at that point. I think that's where, yeah, where it's doing more things for us. Um, yeah, that I think that's the natural progression, because otherwise, if it's just interpreting, rewriting, it's not really a Copilot. Whereas the whole point about a Copilot is, using the whole flight analogy, is I, as the captain, should be able to walk and have a nap, or do my university, or do my crosswords, and somebody else flies the plane.
Yeah.
So
But
yeah.
the way I see it, especially with the agentic stuff, is that it's not necessarily an autopilot. It's not something you click a button, you give it defined rules, and it follows those. It's like having someone who works for you that you delegate some of those things to, and
Mm,
they have. You don't need to be absolutely explicit of every single rule. The more you are, the better you're going to get it aligned to what you think, but they'll also be able to pick up things themselves and do that. And I always loved it with Syntex. You described ages ago about having a summer intern. You've got a big pile of documents, and you say, this is a CV, this is a contract, this is an invoice. I want you to sort those out. And that's a way I see these agentic ones happening, but across a range of different scenarios. And I love the comment in one of the sessions that there was talk about kind of functional co-pilots. They seem to be moving towards agents. So we'll see things like the
mm,
Copilot for finance and elements like that, effectively being bundles of these agents that act in different ways. And we'll get these kind of pre-canned areas coming through. Plus, you can then evolve it to your own view as well, which I really like.
mm.
I think it will terrify some people, but I
Oh
think
yeah.
it's going to be the how we govern that effectively, which will matter, and I hope that steps up quickly.
Well, the thing that I guess I really want to see happen, um, which is kind of the promise that we've had for a long time, and we do start seeing in some rudimentary apps, be it, consumer-based services or corporate ones, kind of like what we see with a basic thing like Viva Insights saying, "Hey, the person you're sending this to, is in a different time zone. Do you want to delay delivery until then?" Things
Mm,
like that, where it's gone, oh, I've connected 2 bits of information. I can suggest an action for you. That's what I want to see Copilot
yeah, I like
doing,
that.
is actually going through our things and saying, hey, you tend to take longer to respond to this message. Would you prefer that when it comes in, I block some time for you to be able to sit there and look, and here are the files or the sites that you access in order to respond to this, so that I can effectively, you can go, right, I'm performing this task. And it opens up almost even like on Windows 10, like a new a new Windows desktop,
Mm.
and says, right, cool, here you go, work on this now.
The
That's
other big thing that was announced was Pages. Did you have any
mm.
thoughts on Pages?
I do, and it's kind of a bringing the baggage from Loop over. I love Loop. I
Interesting.
love that these are Loop files, but they did talk about a new container in SharePoint embedded for these SharePoint Copilot pages. I think the challenge is that management experience, and also the API data behind it to be able to build your own management experience isn't there. So
Mm,
I think from a governance perspective, from an inventory perspective, like I think they've done a lot, but they've missed some of the basic things. Like if you go into the SharePoint embedded experience and you look at all the containers, you can't sort or filter.
yeah.
And you're like, why not? That seems like a basic UI thing. So I think that's probably the only thing. I hope it's something that will be remedied really quickly. But it is good to see them using I guess, the whole fluid framework and using Loop
Yeah,
better.
and that's what I took away. That I think the detail of how it'll run terrifies me, scares me slightly in terms of how that's all going to hook together and the things it's going to open up. I think more the where it's looking at us collaborating with AI and using Copilot to do that, to bring things together, and exactly what you said there, making more use of that fluid item to kind of bring atomic bits of content, I think is really interesting. I think this is a great indication of where that should go. I'm 100% with you in terms of they need to back this up with a governance. I saw someone, and I've suddenly my brain's gone dead with his surname, but Jamie has just put a blog post out about building an intranet in Loop as a thought experiment, and I was just like, that just sounds a governance nightmare from there. But I can see the kind of logic of how it looks and grouping things together, but that will become a pain. And I think the same with these Copilot pages, that to go from being a gimmick to an actual something usable, it needs to have those additional kind of guidance and control built into it, which I think they will do. I might be being optimistic here and a fanboy, but I think that will come and will help that. But it's always nice to see something new coming up as well.
But I think the only thing that going back to, I think probably one of the first points I made about the kind of the acceleration of this is, they talk about having these Copilot pages and being able to collaborate with other people on them. I would dare say that the average user doesn't know how to collaborate, full stop. So I'm sorry, and feel free to flame me, people watching, but many people don't even know how to use SharePoint pages or how to use Loop or OneNote or other collaborative canvases. Maybe they know how to collaborate in a Word document. So,
or even things like track changes and adding comments in Word is not always the natural thing people do. They'll kind of overwrite stuff without telling you, and you won't know about it. I'm going through with my wife and son on his university application forms, and that's exactly the argument I've been having and trying to get them educated on some of that. So I completely agree. And although I hope that by moving to Loop, it kind of becomes a natural way as it does evolve to there, but certainly got some time to get to that point.
I think the Wave 2 just introduces a much bigger adoption journey for users, because it was one thing when it was do a prompt and see what happens, and you could get more advanced with your prompts. Now it's different ways of interacting with the AI system that has prompts. So I think that's the thing is, Copilot was a thing inside existing apps. Now the whole biz chat functionality and also the agents is taking that to a thing where Copilot is its own thing that we need to manage and understand and educate on beyond Copilot in app X. Because Copilot pages, yes, technically it's Loop, but that's in Copilot only. And those kind of things. So I think the adoption has to pivot again.
Those gears of adoption have become very interesting. There's going to be those who are going to go straight for it, those who are not going to change at all. The probably number of the difference between those different groups and the way you move people between that will be absolutely key to organizations over the next few months.
Yeah, and I hope what we see is maybe a resurgence in spending on adoption for people to actually get this to work, because I think adoption has kind of died off after COVID because everyone's using Teams successfully. So we don't need to do adoption anymore. But I think that's the thing is Copilot presents such a new and unique way of working, like Teams did, that just using a prompt from time to time is not good usage. I think people will need to spend more on adoption and look at that again, because we have to look at what's the experience people have, especially if, Copilot and PowerPoint creates an amazing slide that you don't know how to modify because you never actually learned how to use PowerPoint properly.
I think that's really true, and a lovely point to finish on there. So thank you very much for your time on that. We'll collate a lot of these together, and thank you. Any final words?
No, just thanks for having me on the show, and it's great to see it continuing to evolve as in Copilot. So until it takes over the world.
And the show as well. But lovely. Thanks, Laurie.
All right. Thanks, Kevin.
And here I have, is it Caroline? Is it Caroline?
Caroline, yes, or Caroline. I don't know.
Caroline.
I'm a
Have I
Swede,
pronounced
so we
that
say
right?
Caroline. We say Caroline in Sweden,
Caroline.
and I don't expect you to do that.
Caroline.
So
There we go.
pick your choice.
There's a great intro there. Would you like to introduce yourself far better than I am on a Friday morning?
Yes, my name is Caroline Colleen. I can't even pronounce my own name. And I working within adoption and driver of adoption and change within Microsoft 365. And I recently got my MVP badge within Microsoft 365 Copilot and Teams. So I'm super excited.
And it is fantastic to have more people in that Copilot M3. Gosh, I can't speak today either. Copilot MVP side as well. It's a lovely group of people who are passionate about Copilot, which is why we thought we'd love to have you on the show today because was it about a week and a half ago they announced Copilot Wave 2. So we're trying to gather some thoughts and opinions on other people on what mattered to them, what really resonated. So we're just going to open the floor and say, Caroline, what really caught your eye in the Wave 2 announcements?
Well, first of all, let's start with the basics. I really love that they finally changed the name to Microsoft 365 Copilot instead of Copilot for Microsoft 365, like the longest word ever. Still coping with the Biz Chat or the Business Chat rename, but it will get there. But otherwise, I was super excited about
just very
Excel.
quickly. I saw a slide yesterday from someone, and they have business chat at M365 Copilot, but I realized it was because they had it from when it was called that before, and it's all gone full cycle back to that again, which made me laugh.
I love that. Yeah. But otherwise, I think what really caught my eye was that Excel is finally working. I mean, come on. As a
Yeah.
former finance professional, I really like that everybody can be an Excel pro right now. So that is super fun. And I tried it a lot, and it's really good, actually. So that's a big news for me.
So with the Excel, and for those who haven't seen it, I think what I've seen is there's a lot of things that people expected to be there. So things like doing pivot tables and VLOOKUPs, that sort of thing, are now kind of native, and you can suggest things with that on there. But I was more interested in the new bits as well of the advanced analytics. Have you had a chance to look at that at all?
I just done the first preview. I just tried with like a fake table and trying to do something, because that's the sad part is that I'm not working within finance right now, so I don't have the real life cases. But I'm hoping that I can work with a customer soon that actually have real life cases, so that we can really dig into that deeper.
Absolutely, sounds really good, and I love this kind of notion that it's a bit like the VBA used to be. You know, you record something and then it'll pump out some Python now to do that analytics. And if you know a bit about Python, you can go in and tweak that. If you don't, cool, carry on doing what you were doing. So really going to open up a lot of ideas to people, I think.
My only thing that's like bumming me is that when I've been talking to developers, my only brag is that I can speak VBA. Now that's not cool anymore. So I need to learn another programming language.
Oh gosh, Copilot for VBA. That would be something that would be controversial, but very helpful.
I think that's where we can see the movement from. Formerly, we're talking about Copilot. It was, okay, if this is not a license for everybody at the company, but now it might be. So it's a smart turn to take.
Interesting thought to that one. Yes, I like that. So you're suggesting that by opening up the ease of that, it opens it up to more people being able to do that as well.
Exactly. The ones that maybe are scared about prompting or don't know, think it's difficult and just put up the red flag. No, this is nothing for me. Then if you just nudge small buttons, like the one that's my English, like also the little pen with the sparkles that you have in Teams that helps you with how you're writing. I mean, now we also have the schedule function with the stars in Outlook as well, where you can get Copilot to help you schedule a meeting as well. So all these small buttons that comes with Copilot is also very, very helpful, even though you're not a good prompter.
So what about some of the other announcements? I know we were chatting at the beginning, and you haven't had a chance to try out Pages yet, but did you have any thoughts about the impact that could make?
Yes, finally we can elaborate more and collaborate with our colleagues. I really, really like that. And I'm also looking forward to getting from the best chat to get like the buttons that says go to PowerPoint, go to Word. So yeah, there's a lot of good features coming up.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I hadn't kind of picked up on that one, but I think that I love that notion of kind of bringing things together and bringing other people to work on there as well. And I think you're right. It's that starting Copilot and evolve into the other platforms naturally as well. I think, or sorry, I should say, start in BizChat and then evolve into the other platforms. It kind of helps that journey between different places as well, doesn't it?
Yes. And what I really love about Pages is that finally we get Loop to get like their like 50 minutes of fame. Their part in the spotlight, because I really love Loop, so I really enjoy that. I had a customer asking, will there be like different Copilot licenses? Maybe that would be a good idea for Microsoft to have like limited ones, maybe just one agent one, and maybe one for frontline workers further on. But we'll see.
Any last thoughts on Copilot Wave 2 or where you see Copilot going now?
We haven't spoke about PowerPoint yet, and my God, now finally we can do some really good alterations in PowerPoint when it comes. It helps you narrate the presentation. That's a super good feature that's been longed for, and also to help that it helps you build a good storyline and that you can ask it, what am I missing? So yeah, I really like that.
If you had the chance to have Wave 3, what would be the next area you'd love to see them address? And I'm putting you on the spot here, so I hope I've given you enough time to kind of ponder that a little bit.
I'm a fan of the Copilot in Whiteboard, and to get be able to prompt in Whiteboard, that would be really helpful.
I see. So rather than just run the kind of collate, to be able to tweak that a bit with your own prompt on top of that as well.
Exactly, to build your own template to start with. I'm having a brainstorming meeting about this. Can you help me with that? To just instead of the templates that's already there. Otherwise, I mean,
really good. I hadn't thought about that.
Otherwise, I don't know, but because I dig every step we take along the way. So I'm still amazed about the Copilot, the Wave 2. So maybe we can take another chat about that one when I have settled all the new things that already arisen.
Yes, and when the things that have been announced as being available now actually become available to most people, which was probably my biggest grumble of the announcements so far.
Exactly.
We can't always be positive about everything.
Oh, true.
No, but it was fantastic. Well, thank you very much for that chat and that run through. It certainly made me think about a few different things on there, and it's one I love these conversations that kind of stirs up different thoughts and different angles from the announcement. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Goodbye. Speak to you soon.
Bye. Yeah, bye.
Hello, and I am now joined by another of our guests, Tom Morgan. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello there. Hello, my name's Tom, and I work as a sort of developer, architect, talker of things at a company called Cloud Interact in the UK.
A sort of developer. I like that. Is that one who hacks things to pieces and gets it working, kind of? Or
I'm holding on to the idea I still do development most of the time. I talk about development a lot, but yeah, sometimes I even get to do it.
A PowerPoint developer. I like that.
There you go. Yeah.
And we've got you on today to talk a bit about Copilot Wave 2 that was announced recently. And I'm not going to give any lead in. I'm going to kind of let you take it where it wants to go. What were your thoughts from the Wave 2 announcements?
Yeah, I was a bit worried going into it because there was one thing I really wanted to see, and then I was worried it wasn't there. And it was interesting because I listened to the whole thing and I didn't get what I wanted, and I was like, oh, well, this is really interesting, but it's not there. And then I went to look at all the documentation, and it turns out it was there. It just wasn't really talked about, because I think those announcements aren't really for people like us, right? They're for people who don't pay attention every week to the latest thing that's happening in Copilot. So that's fine.
So I
The bit
know us lucky MVPs had kind of an early preview. Were you on that one, or you just watched it live?
I was on that one, but don't tell anyone, I was on another call as well. I was on a customer call. So I was kind of trying to pay attention to both and failing at both. So yeah, I only sort of caught up with it afterwards. I pinged you afterwards for some sort of clarification on some things. But that's when I started looking at the documentation. And honestly, I don't think I would have found it otherwise if I hadn't gone digging, because I hadn't sort of been all the way through that call to find out what was going on. Yeah.
And what was it that had you excited?
So the big thing, ever since Build, I've been really excited for what at Build was called declarative copilots, which is the idea that you could take the Copilot engine, if you like, and just use it, carve off a bit of it, and say, for this very specific use case with this very specific bit of data, do this and do it in this way to solve a particular problem. And I thought that sounded like a great idea. That is there now. That's GA, and it's called Copilot Agents. But also Copilot Agents is it's not called Copilot. It's called a declarative agent, and it's all bundled in with Copilot Agents, which is kind of a renaming, which I get. I think it's a good idea. I mean, agents is the industry term now, isn't it, for alongside this generative AI stuff, and I think this speaks a little bit to, Microsoft have other people have caught up to where Microsoft stole that lead, I think, and so Microsoft need to react to that, honestly. And they have all the tech, it's just how they present it and how they talk about it. So I think Copilot Agents makes sense in this model, because when you're doing that comparison around, do I use Copilot, do I use something else, it's that, yep, agents, I get it, agentic behavior, I get it. And there's something in that as well. And I think we are right at this very start of this journey of understanding and discovering how we can use these agents. So it's very exciting. When you think about internal business process apps and stuff like that in the organization, historically, some of them haven't been brilliant. I mean, like there's this, I've got a smartphone, I get to choose the apps, right? And I will choose the apps and it's very competitive. There's lots of different apps I can choose from. I'll choose the best one. So designers are very incentivized to make very good apps, good, nice UI, all that kind of stuff. Inside an enterprise, you don't get any choice, and IT teams know that. So it's like you're gonna use our app whether you like it or not, right? So not to completely throw all enterprise devs under the bus, because there are some good ones, but you know what I mean. Like it doesn't get the budget, frankly, that it could do, right? So that's definitely an area of interesting improvement, right? Where we've got all these kind of things for doing business processes, but also a lot of them, in a way, they're kind of very CRUD-like. They're abstractions over databases. So they don't always map brilliantly to process flows, business process flows, And so if you have this process you need doing, you might be in 5 different screens just to get it done. The interesting thing about the Copilot, what Copilot does, and the way, if you want to build on Copilot, it forces you to think at the business process level. It forces you to have that business process layer and be like, well, if I'm going to pass this off to Copilot, I need to collect all the information in one go and deal with it. In some ways, I wonder if it's going to force a better process, like a better kind of way of doing business process apps. I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. That's probably a grand ask, but I wonder if it will, because if it's going to come down to whether people demand this, whether people even want it to be the right way to do it. And there's going to be a period of us trying to put it into everything and seeing what works, because it's not going to be the right answer for everything either. And visual UI is still going to be the right thing. But
I think that's a really interesting point on there around sort of the business processes. And I think there will be lots of people who just kind of use Copilot and the agents behind that to trigger a linear business process as it was before. But I think those who truly succeed will be those who challenge that and push it more towards natural language. I think the kind of more it sounds very strange saying this, the more traditional agentic approach to things, taking on building out agents that talk to each other and solve tasks by taking different perspectives and bouncing back and forth rather than the kind of pure extensibility side of things. I think there's a huge potential for that to automate a lot of those processes, and rather than kind of dictate the humans along the way to do those approvals, to dictate the personas that can integrate within that, to have those conversations, that you kind of dictate the boundaries to each of those individual agents and let them work out the outcomes from that, will be the people that benefit most from it as well.
Yeah.
I know Chris Huntingford's, was it yesterday or the day before, had a lovely picture of kind of the old world with lots of boxes going one to the other and that kind of linear flow. And then he had another one with all these scattered lines all over the place and a cat at the end of it. And I was like, oh, he's saying the old ones.
Cat's important, right?
Oh yeah, cats run the internet, obviously. But he was kind of saying that actually what you've now got to work out is there's not going to be a direct route towards a lot of these things. You're kind of defining individual elements, almost a bit like the kind of event-based architecture that we've talked about with microservices, and determine the rules in a kind of very atomic way, and then let the AI find that route between it to some degree, which will be chaotic at times, as you say, that we'll try things out, some won't work, but the things that do will be fantastic.
And it's our business is ready for that. Our business is ready to throw their business process into that mixer and be like, here are the inputs, here are the outputs, you figure out the bit in the middle. I feel like some businesses will, but like that's scary for, a lot of businesses that have spent a long time coming up with this business process, but it's a big risk. There's the other thing that's happened, right? If you think back to, when a lot of this business process stuff got put in place, go like early 90s, maybe, these kind of like standalone applications filling in little bits of business process, because no one person knows how the whole company works, that kind of thing. You get these specialist areas, it's all in someone's head, that workflow is in someone's head, and they got it into a, like a Windows application, like some sort of thing on a database, right? And some of those are still going. But if they're not still going, they've gone from that to web to maybe mobile if you're lucky, but the core business process has stayed the same. And hopefully it's evolved. Hopefully people know what it is. But if not, you've got all those people that back in 1990, say they were, 30 years old, they're approaching retirement now. There's all that skill is walking out the door. So actually it's the right time to maybe mix up the business process a bit, because there is that risk that in the institutional knowledge of what makes your business run isn't going to be around for very much longer unless you've codified it.
Very sadly, I'm going to have to wrap up there because you got me thinking, but we may come back to you on that, of kind of Copilot as a business process engine. Could be a very interesting longer topic, but thank you very much for that, and I hope to see you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Cheers.